Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
So, you've got a 401k, pension, or IRA? Now what?
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, the Worry-Free Retirement, with your host, five-time author and fiduciary, the money missionary himself, Tony Walker.
Hello and welcome to the Worry-Free Retirement. I am Tony Walker, and for about the next 28 minutes or so, I'm going to take you savers on a journey that hopefully will be helpful to you and your retirement. With us in the studio, of course, is America's favorite financial sidekick, our producer of the show, Aaron Orander, and we are recording this show on October 3rd, 2017. Well, as the only show in the country that is dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, I'm often asked by savers a now all too familiar question, which comes in the form of many questions, quite frankly, but as we'll learn today is a very, very important question for savers. And here it goes, something like this. Tony, I've got this IRA I've had for years with a broker or this big Wall Street firm. I don't really know what to do with it or understand it. Here's another question. Tony, I was recently let go from my employer and I've got this 401k and I need to do something with it. Or Tony, out of the blue, I just received a notice from a former employer that I'm eligible to elect a pension option that I never knew I even had. And then finally, Tony, I'm getting ready to retire and I have no clue how to invest my 401k and what in the heck the tax tumor, as you call it, is going to be on this darn thing. Tony, can you help me? To which all of those questions, I would say 100% unequivocally, yes, we can help. That's my response. And I hope you are ready to find out the truth about these qualified plans. Now keep in mind, we got a lot of experience in dealing with what we're going to learn is qualified plan retirement planning. We have worked with over 2,000 savers in helping those savers transfer, or what we call roll over, these qualified plans into individual IRAs so they can use and enjoy and protect that money. Now the reason this show is going to be very important is I want to get down to some basics. I want to assume that everybody watching the show today is confused about the difference between what we call a qualified plan versus a non-qualified plan. I want to make sure everybody understands the difference between a 401k, a 403b, a thrift savings account or TSA, an IRA, lump sum pension. In other words, what do these all have in common? And finally, I want to make sure everybody understands the difference between a rollover and a transfer and why you need a trained retirement specialist such as us who can make sure that you don't run into a bunch of unnecessary taxes or complications when you go about moving this money from your employer or 401k or current broker over to somebody like us. Now, before I get the whiteboard out, let's cover some basics that I talked about in my most recent book, Mailbox Money for Life, which provides a nice little history on what I refer to as qualified accounts and how in the world these recently new types of qualified accounts came into place in the first place. Now, we have to go back to my granddad. Back in his day, when he retired in 1978, while he was working through his employer Bell South all of his life, there was no such thing as a 401k plan. In fact, 401ks weren't even enacted into law until 1978, and they didn't get a lot of traction until we got into the early 90s. And of course, today, almost anyone who works for any size employer whatsoever is going to have an eligibility for a 401k plan. Now, sadly, the financial world, which has totally taken over the narrative, which is mainly Wall Street, has made these 401k plans out to be the mother of all retirement plans because they've, again, pushed this narrative that you've got all this tax savings built into these cases. And depending on one's future tax bracket, don't get me wrong, sometimes you can have a lower bracket and thus, quote, save taxes. But then you have to understand opportunity cost, the loss of use of the money, the enormous amount of fees that are raked off of these accounts, the risk that you have to deal with a 401k, and then finally, when you go to retire or when you die, this tax tumor that never goes away with these qualified accounts. So I'd have to say, folks, the financial world is right. They're great savings tools, but I'd have to say they're lousy distribution tools. So regardless of whether you are retired or whether you had a 401k maybe that's already with an employer or been rolled over to an individual IRA, they're all the same thing. 401ks, 403bs, thrift savings accounts, 457 plans, IRAs, they're what's called qualified accounts. And what that means is they're qualified for pre-tax deductions by the government. But still, it's really a postponement of taxes. You are going to have to one day pay taxes on this money. So you say, well, Tony, how come we've been, I guess for lack of a better word, conditioned to max out these 401ks? And why does the financial world keep telling us to do that? Folks, they want your money. And this has been a bonanza for the financial world, these 401ks, because you don't have any options other than that, or at least that's what you've been told. In fact, this idea of following the herd, I wrote a book called Don't Follow the Herd. And much of that book, Don't Follow the Herd, was my interest in psychology. I have a degree in psychology. And it reminds me of when I studied different psychologists, and I remember there was a gentleman by the name of Pavlov. And Pavlov was very interested in this idea, excuse me, of conditioning humans to act certain ways and why we tend to follow the herd all the time. So what Pavlov decided to do, he decided to get this dog. And what he did was he hooked this dog up, and it had a bell beside the dog, and he would then set a bowl of food in front of the dog, and he would ring the bell as the dog sat there. Pavlov, by the way, was a Russian psychologist around the 1890s, and what he did was he was measuring the salivation of these dogs' response when being fed. So he would set the bowl down, ring the bell as the dogs were eating. They would obviously enjoy the food and salivate, enjoy that food very much. But what he noticed is over time, even when he didn't bring the food, when he rang the bell, Aaron, what do you think would happen to these dogs? Yeah, Aaron's making that salivating or slobbering gesture. I called it Pavlov's slobbering dogs. But they would get messy. They would slobber. Why? Because they had been conditioned when they heard the bell. They didn't have any food there. Their minds had been conditioned when they heard the bell, they knew food was coming. And that's kind of what's happened with most Americans. They ring the bell. The financial world rings the bell as if they've got all the answers. You begin to slobber and you turn over all your money to them. Whether it's good for you or not, you don't know. And then on the end, when people get ready to retire or they try to take money out of these darn plans, I'm the one that has to be the bearer of bad news and say, well, did they tell you about all the taxes? And did you realize how much fees you've had or how much fees you're currently paying? So again, prior to the 401k, people were not conditioned to put so much money with Wall Street because there weren't many opportunities to do that for savers. Most savers, like my granddad, put money in the bank, they put money in fixed annuities, maybe a few bonds, zero coupon bonds, tax-free bonds, and then of course they had those pensions that were sponsored by their employer, the employer-sponsored pension, which many of those have gone the way of the dinosaur. Oh, by the way, back in Granddad's day, these pensions were really what's called annuitized. So when my granddad retired in 1978, he had to take what's called an annuity. So the next time you see those people on TV or those horrible ads on the internet that are always bashing annuities, let's remind ourselves of what a pension is. It's really an annuity. In fact, Aaron will put this up for us. I'm going to read from this. This is somebody I met just the other night. They received out of the blue an eligibility to get a pension from a former employer. They forgot they even had this. So as you can see, this is a personalized benefit statement. But what I want to go down to is look at the two options here. It says you can either take a lump sum cash distribution or you can roll it over. See those key words? Now again, this would be a qualified plan if they roll it over. Granddad didn't have a chance to do this. He had to take, if you go to the next line, an annuity with monthly installments. And then Aaron, if we'll slide down and you can see the different options, you can see this gentleman could take a lump sum now of $128,000 and some change, which again, We're going to roll this into an individual IRA. It's going to still defer the taxes. He's still eventually going to have to owe the taxes, so we'll work with him on trying to minimize those taxes. That's one of the things we do at no cost for our clients. But look at the different options. Single life annuity, joint annuity, 75% survivor annuity, 100%. What in the world does all this mean? That's potential mailbox money. So again, folks, these pensions are not available to you, and that's why we're such big proponents for savers of annuities, particularly fixed indexed annuities. That's why I'm going to mention one more time, get this book, Mailbox Money for Life. If you're a saver out there and you're trying to figure out how you can guarantee an income, guarantee you can never outlive, you need to get this booklet, Mailbox Money for Life. All right, we've talked a lot about qualified plans, and then we're going to mention a little bit about non-qualified plans, and I'm going to show you on the whiteboard in just a second. Make sure we know what is a qualified plan versus a non-qualified plan. What are the tax advantages potentially of the two? And then what should you be understanding one day when you go to take this money out, and why it is so important for you to be tax diversified. You stay tuned. I'm Tony Walker. I'm going to get the whiteboard out. I'll be right back. Feel like the financial world is making more money on your money than you are? Tired of working hard to save money only to get 1% in return? Well, I'm Tony Walker, inviting you to meet with me in person to create a safe and simple game plan that includes Mailbox Money for Life. To schedule your no-obligation appointment with me, simply log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. While there, just click on the Let's Get Started button and we'll make that happen at your convenience. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com, and I'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Worried about running out of money in retirement? For a limited time, five-time author and retirement specialist Tony Walker is making available his latest book, Mailbox Money for Life. For your free copy, simply log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
Welcome back to the WorryFree Retirement. We're glad to have you along. I am Tony Walker, and by the way, again, to get our latest book, Mailbox Money for Life, you got the message, right? TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Speaking of Mailbox Money for Life and just our clients in general, I want to take a moment to thank our 2,000 plus clients who have entrusted us with their money over the years. We really do appreciate it. In fact, which again, we always kid about these dinner seminars, I've often said I would rather do things for my client than buying steak dinners for complete strangers, quite frankly. Here's a few things we've done for our clients this year in a token of our appreciation. Earlier in the year, we had something at the Bowling Green Hot Rods Ballpark. Here's a picture of yours truly throwing out the first pitch. Actually, there was like 15 people that threw out the first pitch, so I think I was the sixth pitch, but oh well. Here's another picture at the Louisville Zoo. We had an outing at the Louisville Zoo for family and their children. That was a lot of fun. One of our most popular events we did this last year, was on the Belle of Louisville. Here's several shots. We took a cruise down the river and back, a wonderful, wonderful time. We also had a little golf outing for some of the folks. There's me hanging off the golf cart. I just played around and played a few holes. It was the strangest thing. I didn't warm up or anything, and I would just randomly pick out different clients, and that's probably the best shots I've ever had in my life. Maybe I ought to do that more. Maybe I'll just go on the golf course and randomly walk up and start playing with people, but that was a lot of fun. And then finally, our Bowling Green client dinner. So we had quite a few client events, and again, for those of you who are clients, thank you so much for your business. And for those of you that aren't clients, I would love the opportunity to meet with you in person, let you see more about the WorryFree Retirement, and help you understand this is about first educating you about your options, number two, making sure that you are a saver personality, and then finally working with somebody who hopefully you feel cares more about you than about your money. That's what this is all about. Our mission is to help savers worry less about money. And again, we are thankful for those of you who have put your trust in us. Thanks again. All right, here we go. We're going to talk about qualified versus non-qualified. Now, first of all, when we say qualified, what that means is the government has qualified your money for certain tax advantages, okay? But let's look at potentially 4 different ways money is taxed. Now, a qualified account could be pre-tax. So for instance, you put the money invested into the 401k, the IRA, the thrift savings account, okay? All of these are pre-tax, 401k, IRA, 457, 403B, whatever. That's pre-tax, all right? Now, anytime you're looking at a non-qualified account, you'll see that it's called after tax, all right? After tax. That means a non-qualified account. It could be a brokerage account at your broker. It could be an account we put with Charles Schwab through our offices. This could go into your savings account. You know, you work, you pay money on the income, right? You pay taxes. You run down to your local bank and you take $1,000 and put it in a CD. That's called after taxes because you've already paid the money on it and now it's going in there, okay? That's called after tax. That's a non-qualified account. An annuity. I have several annuities that are non-qualified. What that means is I received money, right? Took a distribution from my company. I paid the tax, but then I put it in an annuity. We'll go over that in just a minute. Okay, so these are all pre-tax. Tax deferred. Well, actually, these same accounts are actually tax deferred. So when you think about it, your 401k, all right, you haven't paid taxes on it. You're deferring the tax to a future point. Now, in a non-qualified account, tax deferred, you could do an annuity. Actually, the capital gains on real estate are tax deferred, and actually securities. All right? You could even put gold and silver in there. So a non-qualified annuity that I don't take any money out of currently is tax deferred. You have an individual stock you purchased years ago for $1 and it's worth $10. Well, if you don't surrender the stock, that means it's tax deferred. You don't owe any capital gains until you sell it. That's tax deferred. Taxable, all right? So the qualified account is taxable, I'll just call it use, okay? When you take this money out, when you come along in retirement and say, okay, Tony, I want to take some money out of that 401k, when am I going to use it? Every bit of it, 100% that is pulled out is taxable. And folks, there's a few little things you can do to try to minimize that, but you cannot eliminate that tax unless you're willing to give it to charity, period. You've got to be careful. People bring me all these dinner seminar invitations and all this stuff. Folks, there is no way to eliminate that tax unless you leave it to charity. You're only going to have to deal with it. You or your family have to deal with it. That's why we call it the tax tumor. And then tax-free, actually, there is no such thing. You have to kind of slide over here all the way over, and that would be a Roth, okay? So it's kind of interesting. I'm going to draw this dots down here. Aaron doesn't like when I do too much of this because I mess up the board. But a Roth is actually qualified. But you put the money in a Roth with after-tax money. So it's kind of it's almost like a hybrid. So technically a Roth IRA is qualified, but you don't get any pre-tax deductions or anything. You've already paid the tax on it, you put it in, but eventually the proceeds from the Roth are completely tax-free. And this is why in many cases people say, well, Tony, what should I do? Should I take the pre-tax? Should I do a Roth? Should I convert my 401k or IRA to a Roth? The problem with all that is it creates taxes. Now, the reason I like a Roth IRA so much is not necessarily the tax planning aspect of it while you're alive. It's when you get into retirement and when you pass away, because the Roth IRA, since we've already dealt with all the taxes, whether you take it out in retirement or subsequently, let's say you don't use it all and you die and pass it on to heirs, again, the Roth is completely tax-free. So it's after tax, tax-free. So as we go through all of these, why is this all so important to know? Well, first of all, the financial world, folks, has intentionally, I believe they've intentionally, the government, the financial world, has intentionally made all of this stuff so complicated. Let me give you my theory real quick as I get ready to do the new tax plan for that the government's proposing here. The reason they don't want to go to a flat tax, which is the fairest tax that could ever be accumulated or conceived, is it would make this stuff way too simple and eliminate a lot of jobs for a lot of people. Can you imagine if we didn't have any of this? And here's my logic here. Here's my theory on taxes. You can write this one down. This would be so cool and so easy. Here it is. I'll tell you what, Aaron, if you don't mind. By the way, I put TWF, that stands for Tony Walker Financial. The reason I put that up there, folks, we can do all of these. Anything you want to do on this board, whether it's securities, stocks, mutual funds, annuities, life insurance, Roths, IRAs, rollovers, it doesn't matter. We can do it all. So if you have any money whatsoever in a 401k, IRA, thrift savings account, we can handle anything you might need. But real quickly, I got to close. Aaron said we got 1 minute here in this segment. I got to close because I got to get to the Bible. Important stuff in just a second. If we had a 15% flat tax, here's the key, only triggered on a distribution. So think about this. There would be no more pre-tax anymore. It would all be after tax. Everything you would accumulate would be tax deferred. And only when you used it would it be a 15% tax. So if you had dividends, if the dividends weren't distributed, no tax. If you had capital gains weren't distributed, no tax. Annuities, none of that would be taxed. At death, no taxes except a flat 15%. Make it simple. I guarantee the economy would skyrocket, and guess what? Now, really and truly, everybody pays their fair share. And then finally, Social Security would not be taxed whatsoever, which it does fall into tax brackets. Think how simple that'd be. No taxes on your Social Security. You already paid that anyway with your FICA, right? That was kind of pre-tax. And then anything you distribute would be 15%. Pretty simple. Hey, that's the way I am. I'm a simple kind of guy. Listen, if you're looking for simplicity, if you're looking for understanding about what the Bible has to say about all of the recent tragic events that we're seeing in the news, you need to stay tuned because you're going to be surprised as the evidence of where all of this is going in our world, and more importantly, what the Bible says and who to place your ultimate trust in when it comes to, yes, money. I'm Tony Walker. I'll be right back, but I got to get me a cup of coffee. You stay tuned.
Worried about running out of money in retirement? For a limited time, five-time author and retirement specialist Tony Walker is making available his latest book, Mailbox Money for Life. For your free copy, simply log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
Good cup of coffee on this beautiful morning here at our studios in Louisville. Well, folks, as of the date of today's recording, it is October 3rd, 2017. On a somber note, we have just witnessed, just several days ago, the largest mass shooting of deaths that has ever occurred in the United States, of course, just a couple of days ago in Las Vegas. To date, 59 people were randomly killed by a lone gunman, an estimated 500 plus injured. And what's the reaction of the press and most people? Maybe it's a religious issue or political issue. And while I can agree that this was pure evil, and I must remind you that while we tend to think of our world as growing more and more evil, we tend to think that politics or some religious group is going to have all the answers or possibly could be the problem. Depending on one's point of view here, we need to understand what the Bible says about the end times. Now, this is not going to be a real quick sermon on the end times. I don't know when the end's going to be, but we have to agree that all of these things we're seeing are reminders of how quickly things can be changed or totally devastated. And that's why we want to focus in Revelations not on the end times and who's going to control or be affected by the end times, which is not the politicians and the religious leaders, but the Revelations focuses on finance, commerce, merchants, merchandise. In other words, it's not the religious and politicians that control the world. It is the financial world's system. It's greed, us wanting more and more. And what we see is this ultimately leads to our ruin. So Aaron, let's turn over to Revelations 18:3. Revelations 18:3. Very interesting, poignant verses here. As we read, let's put those up full screen, Aaron. For all the nations, this is Revelations 8:3, have drunk of the wine of the passion of her immorality. Talking about Babylon here, which is a representation, in my view, of the wealth of the world's systems. And it says, the kings of the earth have committed acts of immorality with her, and the merchants of the earth have become rich by the wealth of her sensuality. And then we see in verse 11 that Babylon and the world's system comes crashing down where it says, and the merchants of the earth weep and mourn over her because no one buys their cargoes anymore. Look at verse 17 now. Look at this. In 1 hour, such a great wealth has been laid to waste. Wow, that is powerful. You see it there, folks? How quickly the world's wealth can be laid to waste. Did you see the devastation of the hurricane that ripped through Puerto Rico? That island literally has been laid to waste in just a few days. The horrific video, we won't even show that, of this shooting that took place. Quickly, things were shut down. People died. The economy stopped just for a brief time in that particular area. So people, here's my point. Your money, your 401k, your annuity, I don't care what you've got, eventually it all comes to an end. Now, maybe not in our lifetime are we going to see total devastation like Revelations is talking about. That's not what I mean. I'm just saying at some point, you and I both, we will all die. It's going to be over. Our money's going to be gone, and so will all these worries we keep attaching to it. So you say, well, Tony, what am I supposed to do? Well, I tell you what, if you're a follower of Jesus Christ, the good news is you have nothing to fear. And while certainly you need to understand the things of the world, you got to understand your 401k, the difference between qualified, non-qualified, you and I must be warned again as we read these verses of Scripture to not get too attached to the things of this world, because in an instant, these things could be taken away or changed. Christian, your treasure is not found in this world, but in the wisdom of God granted to you by faith in His Holy Spirit. So let me close with this reminder. Let's turn over, Aaron, to 1 Corinthians 2:9. 1 Corinthians 2:9, which Paul says this, things which eye has not seen and ear has not heard, and which have not entered the heart of man, all that God has prepared for those who love Him. And then he closes in verse 12, now we have not received the spirit of the world. I think he's talking about the world system here, but the Spirit who is from God, that we might know the things freely given to us by God. And that is refreshing good news as we look at all the tragedy and things going on in this world. You be of good cheer, folks, is what I'm saying. So what about you? Let's get back to the personal finances of life. You may be sitting there saying, Tony, I think I have become too attached to the verbiage from the financial world. I've been too attached to what they're saying. Maybe they've created all this worry when I don't have to worry so much. Maybe there is a way I can simplify things and create a game plan that allows me to better use and enjoy and protect my money. And most importantly, maybe there's somebody, hopefully that's us, that seems to care more about you than we care about your money, which we do. Folks, I've been at this over 33 years. We've got over 2,000 clients, and I would like to share with you our process called the WorryFree Retirement. So let's get started. It's very simple to do. There's no cost or obligation for us to meet. All you got to do is log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com or give us a call on the toll-free number at 877-499-WALK. While there, don't forget at the TonyWalkerFinancial.com website, you can scroll down and order our latest booklet, Mailbox Money for Life, talking about a way to be worry-free and make sure you don't run out of money. Mailbox Money for Life might be just your ticket. Well, I'm Tony Walker. I hope you've enjoyed today's program, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week on the WorryFree Retirement. But you remember, if all else fails, you be worry-free. Make it a good one.
Thank you for watching the Worry-Free Retirement with Tony Walker. If you need a safe and simple game plan for your retirement, log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and schedule a free, no-obligation meeting with Tony.